On today's show, the Houston Rockets losing streak is over. It stops at 13 games. They pick up the win against the Minnesota Timberwolves behind the best game of Jalen Green's career. 42 points, a new career high for Jalen Green. How are the Rockets able to get this win against the Minnesota Timberwolves? What adjustments did they make? How is Jalen Green able to be so effective against the T-Wolves? We're going to break it all down for you coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
Hey, Houston fans, I am so happy.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Or you can go to YouTube. Tell me in the comments on YouTube, how do you feel about Jalen Green bouncing back in a huge game? His new career high, 42 points. Let me know in the YouTube comments. As always, appreciate you for making Locked On Rockets part of your day, whether it's on the way to work, at lunch, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Joining us now to break down the end of the Houston Rockets losing streak. No more losing for this Houston Rockets team. The 13-game losing streak is gone, and on top of it, they got a win, and Jalen Green had quite possibly the best game of his career, a bounce-back game after the stinker against Minnesota previously. A huge career night. Joining us to break down all of the action is Madison Moore, who you can follow on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Madison, this was such an exciting game against, again, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I guess the Rockets just can't get enough of these guys. I feel like I'm getting deja vu. They've played them so many times recently. 119, 114 final score. And let's face it, the last game that these Rockets played against the T-Wolves, it was rough. Saturday night, Jalen Green had quite possibly the worst game of his career. And you needed to see a bounce back from him. You needed to see him kind of respond to how poorly he played in that game. And not only did he respond in an individual, a big way, the team kind of responded and they got the dub, 119-114. And Jalen he was fantastic. 42 points, a career high for Jalen Green. 15 of 25 from the floor, 6 of 12 from long distance, 6 of 10 at the free throw line. That needs to be better. 60% is not going to cut it, but we're not going to get too harsh on him. 4 rebounds, 4 assists, had a steal, had a block, only 1 turnover, was a plus 19 in his 35 minutes played. He is now the second youngest player in NBA history to record 2 40-point games in a 3-game span. The only other guy who's done that, Luka Doncic, and he's pretty talented. Madison, what are your immediate reactions to this game from Jalen Green against the T-Wolves?
Man, I'm ecstatic. I mean, the type of game that Jalen had last game, he seemed, by the end of that game, he seemed lost, or just the fire wasn't there, the passion wasn't there. He didn't respond in the ways that we wanted him to respond, getting down the stretch. And it was a really disappointing game for Jalen. But it was so important, especially as Jalen, as a young player, as a player that we are starting to learn, what is his mentality? Who is he as an individual? This, I think, spoke volumes, right? For him to come out with the determination that he came with, to respond in the ways that he responded, really was just more than we ever could have asked for. I mean, Jalen had probably the worst game of his career, or, definitely of the season last game. And then about 6 or 7 games ago, he had another terrible game where he scored 9 points, and that was also against the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? And so this team is a team that has plagued Jalen for a long time, for both his 2 seasons in the league, he really struggles against this team. And it's because they're a high pressure team. They pressure the ball. They get up on you. They understand that Jalen doesn't do well with physicality, right? And so they're constantly putting pressure on the ball with Jalen, right? And so it's something that Jalen has struggled with. Is one of his weaknesses, that physicality, and they are a turnover-laden team. They force you into turnovers. And for Jalen to respond, because that ball pressure was still there all game. I mean, McDaniels was picking Jalen up full court in the first half, right? And Jalen was still able to get us into our sets and score within the flow of the offense. And he was super efficient. I love the way he got to his shots. He started with his in-between game with floaters and mid-range shots, right? And outside of the late clock threes he had to force up as the alpha on our team, all of his three-point shots felt within rhythm and within the flow of the game, right? No hero ball. This was all great stuff. He got us in and out of our sets. I mean, we talk about the transition for KPJ as a point guard all the time, right? This transition, KPJ is a two-guard. KPJ is a two-guard. Well, I think Jalen deserves some credit. While KPJ has been out, Jalen Green has been our de facto point guard. And he's done a damn good job of it. He's done a damn good job of getting Sengun the ball, allowing him to run the offense, and just making the simple, correct plays. And he's played so well within that. And tonight we got a chance to really see him shine. And not just on the offensive end, because a lot of, I feel like, what we think about Jalen is in terms of making and missing shots, right? But also on the defensive end tonight. I mean, this is the Jalen I remember seeing, competing hard, fighting against around screens, right? Before this losing streak happened. And, he came up with a big block at the end of the game. I thought D'Lo killed us in the first half. And in the second half, Jalen shut that down. I thought he trailed him well across screens. And then that play where he just used his athleticism to hedge. He hedged really hard, all the way almost a foot in the paint into the middle of the paint, in the middle of the floor, and then got all the way back using his athleticism to get the block on that shot. I mean, just all around great game for Jalen, and he closed this game. He was the star we needed at the end of the fourth quarter, right? I mean, he scored like seven consecutive points, or very close together, inside of 4 minutes, right? And it's just that's what we need out of Jalen. And those are the flashes when we look for young guys who can be centerpieces to this team. Those are the flashes that we hope will become consistent enough to lead us to the playoffs again.
Absolutely. No, I think a couple things that stood out to me from this game. Not only, obviously, he had, the bounce back was huge, right? And I think this was the game that Jalen desperately needed, but this was a game that the team desperately needed, right? You could see it. They wanted this win. They were focused. They kind of weathered the storm there at the top of the fourth quarter that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, kind of the game flow of this one, leading by as many as 11 points and then kind of watching that lead crumble away due to turnovers, due to mistakes, due to bad shots, and then kind of weathering that storm and getting back through it. But for Jalen, what really stood out to me is we've seen Jalen put together some really impressive high-octane scoring quarters, right, where he just goes off, right? But then we've also seen quarters where he just kind of disappears, right, where he shrinks away, where he doesn't, where he's not seeking his shot, where he's not looking to get, actively demanding the basketball, calling for it, wanting to close out a game. And it's not necessarily for lack of want to, but maybe his teammates aren't finding him, or he's not getting as involved as he should be, in the closing stretches of some of these games in the past. In this game, his scoring output was actually so balanced in this one. He had 13 points in the first quarter. He had 8 in the second quarter, so he had 21 by halftime, 10 points in the third, and then he closed out strong with 11 points in the fourth quarter to get to his grand total, new career high, 42 points. So he's had 41 in a couple different losses now against the Hawks last season, and then the Charlotte Hornets last week in loss number 12 of the losing streak. So I almost immediately want to say this 42-point game, his new career high, is arguably his best game of his career, because not only did it come in a win It came off the backs of what was another long losing streak. So you end the losing streak, right? You say, all right, we're done with this. We're done with all the losing. You come out in a big way. And to your point, Madison, I think it's a fantastic point. Jalen struggled against this Timberwolves team. This was almost like him kind of exercising those demons a little bit and showing, no, I am this guy. Like, I am him, right? Like, I can be the guy. I can handle my own against this T-Wolves team. And he did it. Jalen really put the team on his shoulders in this game, absolutely. But I agree. I think he did it within the flow of the offense. There were some possessions, especially there, I think in the first quarter, give or take, where Jalen had put up a couple shots here and there that were maybe questionable, where they're kind of like the whole like, no, yes, like, okay, it goes in kind of shots. Couple of those, and he hit them. And when he hits those shots, those tough makes early, then he kind of gets it going. And then from that point, I think as the game started to progress, you really saw the Rockets getting into their offensive sets, Jalen playing within the flow of the offense, playing well, playing off of other guys, right? Where you would get the ball to Alp and then they'd get the defense in rotation. And then Jalen would maybe start the possession, and then the passes would go through 3 or 4 other guys, and then Jalen would wind up with the ball back in his hands for a wide open 3, or being able to attack while the defense is rotating, and that led to some really, really easy opportunities for him. Jalen Green is your Locked On Rockets player of the game in this one. We're not done talking about him. He had a huge night, a career night for Jalen Green. We're going to keep sharing thoughts on the rest of this game. Alperen Sengun's impact, plus the new hottest audio clip on the soundboard that we're going to play back for you guys, as well as the impact of other guys in this game. Tari Eason, Jae'Sean Tate, Eric Gordon with some key moments late in this game. We're going to break that down for you. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they are the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. All in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Right now, you can head over to FanDuel.com to take a look at who the odds-on favorites are for the NBA Finals this season. The championship odds for the 2023 title. Boston Celtics leading the way at plus 390. Milwaukee Bucks right behind them at plus 550. Brooklyn Nets at plus 800. Also the Denver Nuggets plus 800. And then the Golden State Warriors plus 850. And the Memphis Grizzlies rounding out the top 6 at plus 1,000. So for all those odds, be sure to go visit FanDuel.com. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. And man, Madison, it just feels nice. I'm kind of like basking, and it feels nice to just be able to talk about a dub. Like the losing, I know, look, here's how you know that the losing was getting to the players, because the losing was getting to me, man. Like, I'm not even on the court, right? I'm not putting in the blood, sweat, and tears, and like I'm sitting here just talking about the losses, and it's bothering the hell out of me. So you know it's killing the guys who are actually out there experiencing the losses. 13 of them in a row. This has to feel like you just got the monkey off your back, right? You can hopefully get back to, not too much winning, because Wemby and Scoot are still on the table, but right, these types of wins, right, where you gut one out. These are huge for this group of guys. And I had the chance, I asked Jalen after the game about that stat, that he and Luka Doncic, the two youngest guys ever, the only two guys ever, 20 or younger, to have the 40 plus points, twice in three consecutive games. And I thought Jalen's answer was really impressive, honestly. A really kind of a very mature answer. Let's put it that way, because he could have taken it any which way about, me and Luka, whatever. But his answer was, he said, I'm trying to be one of the best players in the NBA. It's all built on growth, learning the game, understanding. I'm here for all of that. I'm trying to be coached, learn as much as I can, so that path to greatness is a little bit easier. This might be one of the best quotes Jalen Green's ever had, honestly. Like, I'm not trying to take credit for it because it was my question, but like, I was kind of in awe. I was like, wow, like, this is a 20-year-old kid, but he understands that there's so much work to be done. And it's moments like this, right? The game coupled with the recognition, the self-awareness, talked about how at shoot-around earlier in the day before the game, he and Steven Silas were going over film and they were breaking down, how he was going to handle double teams and how he was going to handle that ball pressure that you alluded to in the first segment. And I think when you look at this, like, Jalen is a sponge, right? He's trying to absorb as much as he can, and he's going to be better for it. And it is important to remember, even though he did just have a really rough game against the T-Wolves, the one right before this one, it's only been a year and a half with Jalen, right? You're going to have some ups and downs. And it sucks that, one of Jalen's worst games kind of coincided with the losing streak being at its peak and other guys not looking so hot in that game. And it's just it was like a snowball effect, and it all compounded and kind of exacerbated the entire situation to where it made it all look a lot worse than it probably actually was in the grand scheme of things. But to have him come back and have this type of game, and I was really impressed, Madison, with the way that he and Sengun continue to feed off of one another in this game. Like, their two-man game is and needs to be the foundation for this team moving forward, because it's so exciting watching those two guys. And Jalen even talked about the fact post-game, he said that he called up Al P the other day, just, I guess, like out of the blue, just called him up and was like, he said, keep going. Like, just, just talking to him on the phone, and just those two guys are getting closer. They're developing a bond. They're developing that chemistry, and the sky is truly the limit for what those guys can bring to a team, at least on the offensive end.
Yeah. I mean, I think what those two have is a sort of natural chemistry that I think is growing into something really, really special. Now that the team is starting to lean into Alperen Sengun's strengths, he had another strong game, all-around game tonight. And him and Jalen, we have been seeing the glimpses of their chemistry since, honestly, last year in the empty corner sets. You know what I mean? And now you could see Jalen and Sengun discussing how they were going to handle something. And you could just see them going back and forth. Okay, well, this is how I want to handle it. You're going to do it this way. And then I feel like right after that, Jalen did a backdoor cut that Sengun found him. And he missed the layup, but McDaniels fouled him. Right. And that was one of the things that I felt like Jalen had been missing. There were all these opportunities for these backdoor situations with Sengun, and they just haven't gotten there yet. And tonight I felt like was the first glimpse of that type of stuff being born. And the Rockets, they have something very special between those two because they complement each other so well. I mean, Jalen's best passing skill set is that pocket pass, and he leverages his threat and his speed to the basket to get Sengun open in the middle of the floor where he can be so dynamic, right? And that's why I feel like Jalen leads the team in hockey assists, because he's able to get Sengun the ball where he needs it to make plays in such a dynamic way that really helps the entire team. And I think it's really important. There's been a lot of speculation of who should we build around? Should it be Sengun? Should it be Jalen? And it's both of them. It's very clear that the answer is both of them. Sengun is good for Jalen's development, and Jalen is good for Sengun's development. The pick and pops today, we've seen some pick and pop actions where Sengun shot the ball in rhythm. He made one of his two. You know what I mean? These guys have a natural chemistry at such a young age that I think we should really cultivate. And for all the struggles that Jalen has had, one of the things that we knew was we didn't like how this offensive system didn't allow for him to get easier shots to get himself going, because we know he's such a rhythm player, right? Well, Sengun helps him with that. I mean, I love the types of shots that Jalen is taking now. Even the tough ones, now they're in the mid-range. You know what I mean? A much high percentage shot for Jalen, something that he can get into and elevate and score with a higher efficiency than a long three-point bomb, right? And then when you mix that in with the cuts, right? And then the guys decided to buy in on defense today. The entire team. And when you buy in on defense, you get stretches where you force turnovers, and the game becomes easy in stretches. And I feel like the game is so hard for the Rockets sometimes. It's just so hard. I have to get into these sets. We have to score in these sets. And sometimes it's easy to get turnovers and just get out and run it. You know what I mean? And I think that it should be the Rockets' young identity. We play through Jalen and Sengun. They are our fulcrum. They are the engines of this offense, right? And then we're scrappy on defense. We may not know where to be at all times, but we're going to be there. We're going to be wherever we are. We're going to do it 100% speed. We're going to get deflections. We need to buy into that identity. We're going to hustle. You know what I mean? And hopefully that is something that you can build on and become better and gain that type of chemistry. So I think that's the blueprint for the Rockets moving forward.
To your point about the turnovers in this game and kind of buying in on the defensive side, the Rockets did do a good job of forcing some turnovers from this T-Wolves team. They forced 19 turnovers and they scored 18 points off of those turnovers. Now the Rockets' turnover situation was still not great. You managed to win the game despite the high turnover total. They turned the ball over 23 times. T-Wolves scored 19 points off of those turnovers. But going back to Alp here for a second, his stat line in this game, 21 points, 8 of 12 shooting, including some key buckets at the top of the fourth quarter as the T-Wolves started to make their run. The Rockets had an 11-point lead at one point at the top of the fourth quarter. They opened the quarter with an Eric Gordon little kind of layup that Alp dimed him up for, and it was 92-81. And this was 30 seconds into the fourth quarter. And then from that point, the T-Wolves just started. They were going on a run. D'Angelo Russell hits a three. Jaden McDaniels hits a three. D'Angelo Russell comes back down, hits another three. Quick 9-0 run. It's a 3-point game. And then, kind of go back and forth for a little bit. And then Sengun finally gets the bucket to start giving them some breathing room. He gets his little kind of push shot, whatever you want to call it. Has another one a few possessions later, dimed up by Tari Eason, and you're kind of floating the lead. It's like about a 5-point lead, and you're thinking like this is the spot where the game could tip one direction or the other. And thankfully, the Rockets were able to kind of weather that storm with the turnovers, with the lack of execution there at the top of the fourth quarter, and then also just the T-Wolves' insane shot making. And they were able to kind of hold on. Jalen Green checks back into the game, and then they're able to kind of ride him home in this game. Alp did have a couple turnovers late in this game, a couple travel calls that, were a little frustrating. And I had the chance to ask Alp about just kind of the his offensive involvement late in the game compared to how it was for him against the T-Wolves the last couple times that he's played against them. And Alp decided to gift us with this message.
Yeah, I did some bullshit.
He goes on. I don't have the full clip. I have the shortened clip on here. The full clip is on Twitter, but it's incredible because he says that. He drops his line.
Yeah, I did some bullshit.
And he explains, some BS turnovers, and then he kind of looks away and he looks at the head of PR and he raises his eyebrows like, oh no, I wasn't supposed to say that. And everybody starts cracking up and laughing. And then off on the side, you hear Eric Gordon, who says, don't need no interpreter for that, because you have Alp and his translator right next to him, and everybody's just losing it. Alp is a national treasure and must be protected at all costs. He had a great game. Jalen Green had a fantastic career night. Alp had another great game in tandem with Jalen Green. He does have to cut down on those turnovers. Again, he had 21 points, 8 of 12 shooting, 7 boards, 7 assists, 5 turnovers. You got to cut down on the turnovers, but he continues to be that kind of offensive hub. And when the offense is going through him, when they involve him, and when guys are playing off of him, you saw it in this game. The Timberwolves defense was, especially early on, was kind of shading Alp quite a bit. It looked like they were kind of game planning against Alp from the jump rather than waiting to make halftime adjustments and then shutting him down in the second half. They were like, no. We got to stop this kid in the early going rather than letting him hang almost 20 points on us in the first half like he did the last couple games. Stop him early. And the gravity, right? The way that they were shading towards him, sending 2 and sometimes 3 guys to the strong side of the court to pack the paint and to slow him down, kind of opened up opportunity for other guys elsewhere on the roster. Coming up, I want to talk about some of the other impact players from this game for the Houston Rockets, because there were a lot of guys that played their part in this game, specifically Tari Eason, his second career NBA start. He has been impactful in these past couple games. And then Jae'Sean Tate off the Houston Rockets bench had a really, really strong night. We're going to talk about those guys as well as our final takeaways from this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's talk a little Tari Eason, Madison, because Tari now second career NBA start in place of Jabari Smith Jr. And Tari's just one of those guys who makes things happen on the basketball court. And wow, did he make a lot of things happen on the court in this game. 11 points on 5 of 8 shooting. We're going to talk about one of those misses in a second, but had 9 rebounds, 3 of them offensive, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers in his 26 minutes played. And I think the play that was just insane, right, is you got Anthony Edwards barreling full speed towards the basket, and Tari is able to manages to somehow wrap him up and force what should have been a jump ball on the. I don't know how the refs missed this. They ruled it a foul, foul on the floor originally, and then Steven Silas had to actually burn his challenge. Which this is like my gigantic pet peeve. If I can get up on a soapbox here for a second, Madison. I hate that that NBA coaches have to burn challenges on referees missing just blatantly obvious calls, right? And the NBA needs to institute like the 1+1 system where like if you get the challenge call right, you get the timeout back and you get another challenge to use for later in the game. Because then you get one challenge for if a referee really screws up and you know they screwed up, you're just like, all right, second quarter, cool. Let me burn my challenge because I know you screwed up and I'll get the other challenge back and then I'll sit on that one for crunch time later in the game. I'm going to get down off the soapbox now, but I wanted to get that point across. Tari had an impactful game, man. It felt like he was doing just a little bit of everything that the Rockets needed and really provided some of that spark, some of that energy, and kind of really setting the tone early in this one.
Yeah, I mean, disruptive. I mean, that's what we got him for, to be this disruptive force on the ball. And he came out the gates immediately being disruptive. He did it last game too. I mean, this is what we were talking about balancing our starting lineups, right? Before KPJ went out, EG, a lot of us talked about how we would like KJ to start instead of EG just to give this lineup a certain balance. It wasn't because he was a better individual player than him. It's that these lineups need guys who hustle, who run, who don't need the ball in their hands to affect the game. And Tari, yeah, but yeah, Tari embodies a lot of that. I mean, he has a future as a starting 3 on this team if he can continue to be this disruptive and 4 steals. I mean, this guy gets deflections. He hustles. He gets out on the floor and he sets a defensive tone. Something we really need with Jabari being out. You know what I mean? And I think he did his job. He knows how to affect the game, and it's kind of interesting because Tari has some kind of bad, crazy, wild habits sometimes. He doesn't give the ball up when he should, and he has some tunnel vision things going on. And he reminds me of the type of player that, coaches have to learn how to deploy in the right situations and circumstances, right? But if you use him correctly, he can become such a dynamic force for you on the defensive end. And I think, Tari has a really bright future. We just got to get him to start making layups. It just has to happen.
Look, hang on. When the moment Tari got that steal and was in transition and had the breakaway and then missed the layup right off the back iron, like my immediate reaction, like maybe Tari's immediate reaction was like this.
Yeah, I did some bullshit.
Like, I mean, it was just one of those where, like, I think on that possession too, I believe he had KJ like kind of filling on the wing as well. Like he could have like maybe lobbed it over to KJ. And instead he took it himself. And it's like, oh, cool. Cause he had one of those layups in a recent game too, where like he took it all the way himself and like kind of, it's almost like he stopped just short of the basket. And then it's almost like he jumped too early, but then got right there to the lip of the, the lip of the basket and just kind of dropped the ball in. And he did that again, but just, I don't know if it's because he's got the crazy big hands or what, but like we got to fix his touch around the rim. Because the moment he starts making layups, it's over, Madison. It's over for the rest of the league. When Tari Eason starts making layups consistently, it is game over.
He has to use the glass, man. He needs to get back to the fundamental. Use the square, dog. Like, because you just rushing that thing on the tip of the rim, man. It's not happening, dog. He has to get back to the basics, and he has to just really focus in on his ball placement and getting it on the backboard, hitting the square.
Absolutely. The other guy that I thought was kind of helped set the tone in this game, and I want to give some flowers to Garrison Matthews as well. But Jae'Sean Tate, off the bench, continues to be this. He's very similar kind of in style, right? A disruptive force, but a guy who makes things happen for this Rockets team. And the thing that really stood out to me about Jae'Sean Tate, he had 11 points, 3 of 6 shooting, 7 boards, 1 assist, 1 steal, did have 4 turnovers. Again, the turnovers were an issue for this Rockets team in this game, but 2 things. 1, they rebounded by committee, which I thought was an interesting thing, right? Instead of it all being like just Al P's responsibility or just Tari, like you look down the lineup, go through the starters. KJ, 7 boards. Tari, 9 boards. Al P, 7. Eric Gordon, 4. Jalen, 4. Then you go down to the bench. Jae'Sean Tate had 7. Bruno Fernando had 4 rebounds in the minutes that he played. Like they kind of gang rebounded and rebounded by committee. And that's something that you have to do when you're dealing with an interior presence like Rudy Gobert, who still walked away with 16 rebounds in this game, but you got to throw multiple bodies at him, right? You can't put the onus on one guy to box him out. I thought there was one play that really stood out, right? Where like Alp and Jae'Sean Tate were both simultaneously trying to box out Rudy Gobert. And Alp like jumped with Rudy and had his back like into Rudy's chest and was just boxing him out enough to where Rudy still kind of got his hands on the ball, and then Jae'Sean Tate came in and just like ripped it away from him. And that's the kind of like gang rebounding that you need to stop a force like that. So I really did enjoy that from the team in this one. And I just love that Jae'Sean Tate knows how to push the pace, man. He gets a rebound and he immediately is putting it on the floor and looking to get it up as quickly as possible. There were moments where he would put the ball on the floor, get out in transition, and then immediately get into like a DHO set with like Garrison Matthews or something to try and generate a wide open 3. And like moments like that, kind of they destabilize the defense because then you can't get the defense set, and then they're already in rotation. They're free. They're not matched up properly. All those little things. I love him pushing the pace for this Rockets team.
Right. And one of the big things that Jae'Sean Tate allowed Jalen to do was get off the ball some on bringing it up the court. I mean, we just seen last game that pressuring Jalen, that type of stuff. Jalen has to be the primary scorer, the initiator, and the point guard, right? That is and then play great defense, right? And then fight around screens. That is a lot of energy to be expelled for one player. But Jae'Sean Tate being in the game, he brought the ball up a lot of these possessions just to give Jalen a break and not have to bring the ball up and be pressured and worried about, you know what I mean? Worry about it getting picked from him, right? Just to allow him to play as a 2 guard in some of these possessions, give him a breather, and that's really, really important. Like those type of things aren't going to show up in the stat sheet, like Jae'Sean being Jae'Sean at certain points of the game, just to give our ball handlers a break and to allow them to come off their screens like in a natural 2 guard position. I thought that was really important. And if I want everybody to go back and watch that 4th quarter defense on Anthony Edwards by Jae'Sean Tate before he started hitting those crazy threes when the game was already over. I mean, this guy was all over the place. I'm talking about helping 3 players over, sprinting back to close out and effectively guard Anthony Edwards, who just dropped 44 on us. I mean, he took it personally. He was the hands down the best defender in that 4th quarter. And that is where I feel like Jae'Sean Tate really showed his worth. We haven't been in a lot of those type of situations. So we forget sometimes how good of a defender, one-on-one defender Jae'Sean is. And Jae'Sean not only I thought was excellent one-on-one, but his activity, boxing out, rotating, switching. I mean, this guy was flying all over the court. There was 2 possessions I remember where I was like, how did he just go from one side of the three-point line to the other? Like, he's literally flying across the court.
It's funny. It's funny watching.
It's infectious.
It's funny watching him play defense because he is everywhere, and he's kind of covering ground for other guys who maybe are like a second or a half second late on their rotations, and he's like stunting over or just kind of playing between 2 guys and like making sure. And there's times when he's shoving guys in the right direction. He's like, no, go this way. Like, you're going, like, we're switching this, we're going this way. He's vocal. Like, this Rockets team, I would, you know, again, multiverse theory, different reality, whatever. There's a world where Jae'Sean Tate isn't injured to start the season. This Rockets team would not be 11-36 if Jae'Sean Tate had been here the entire time. I'm not saying Jae'Sean Tate suddenly adds like 10 wins to this Rockets team, but there are a lot of very close games, especially earlier in this Rockets season, that Jae'Sean Tate, having him available, might have tipped the scales in your favor with his defense, with his leadership, with his communication, all the intangibles that he brings, and all the tangibles too. He brings the intangibles and the tangibles. Jae'Sean Tate, respect Jae'Sean Tate. He is a baller. He knows exactly what he's doing on the court. He knows who he is, and this Rockets team desperately, needed him, and it's good to have him back on the court. This was a chippy one, Madison. This is the last thing I got here before we, kind of wrap things up. There was some jawing back and forth, slow-mo, Kyle Anderson and Jalen Green kind of getting into it at one point, and Jalen Green kind of shoving him off, like, don't get near me, right? They were a little chippy. And then there was one moment, I said I wanted to give him his flowers. There was one moment where Rudy Gobert was setting a screen on Garrison Matthews, and Gary Bird, I swear, I was sitting about 30 feet away, and Gary Bird threw his whole shoulder into Rudy Gobert's chest, and Rudy looked at the looked at the ref and kind of looked down at himself like, what the hell? And he was Garrison is out there playing football on a basketball court is what's happening on a nightly basis. Like, he's going out there taking charges, taking spills. When Garrison drives to the rim to put a layup up, like he's going in there like he's a fullback, like just all the way throwing his body into guys. And you know what? It works, right? It works for him. Garrison plays with some FU mentality, and he kind of has to, right? Like, he needs that edge, that chip on his shoulder. But having some of that, right, it definitely helps, and I think it bleeds into his teammates as well.
Yeah, no, I remember that play, and I remember Rudy's reaction. I was like, "This is good." That's how Garrison gets all those moving screen calls. He just runs as hard as he can. He runs his hip as hard as he can into somebody's knee or chest and falls down and gets the call. We love it, man. We love how hard Gary plays, man. But I have one last thing to say before we
absolutely
log off. To all the Rockets fans, Rockets truthers, the diehards, I want you to understand something about development, right? And understand that not everybody's going to be a Luka Doncic, right? Every player needs their own time to develop, and they do, right? And you need to give them the room to grow. After Jalen's worst game of the season, I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter and Rockets Spaces and Rockets Watch that honestly I thought was very unfair for a young player who's only played a year and a half in this league and who's averaging 22 points a game. When you talk about development, this game is more than makes and misses, okay? And if you can only judge development by makes and misses, you will miss a lot of the improvement that young players make, okay? I want people to understand Jalen's playing the point guard right now, something that KPJ has been practicing for, a year and a half now, right? And we still have real issues with KPJ, right? And it's an argument that Jalen's actually initiating the offense a little bit better right now. You know what I mean? Do you think Jalen would be able to do that at this point last season? right? Just initiate, get us into our offense.
Yeah, no.
You know, is Jalen's handle amazing? No, but I guarantee you it is much better than it was last year. You know what I mean? And it's these little things that allow you to affect the game in so many other ways. And I feel like we're so obsessed with Jalen's makes and misses. And you have to understand he is playing on a losing team where the entire game plan is to stop Jalen Green, right? It's hard to score 22 points a game in this league, right? When the entire game plan is against you. Let
alone 42.
Right, let alone 42. And yet we are still seeing glimpses of what he can be in the future, right? It's okay that he's not consistent yet. You know what I mean? It's okay. It takes everybody their own time. There are plenty of players that develop at their own pace. Most of the time, they come in and make these type of leaps that you want to see in the third year. And Chris Verno on the mismatch also talked about this. A lot of sophomore players are having sophomore slumps right now because teams have film on them and they're game planning against them. Okay. And it's hard to understand how do you succeed in these contexts when teams are game planning around. You shocked the league in your first year. When Jalen went off after the All-Star break, he shocked the league. They didn't know how to guard him. Right. And so now teams do, and he's taking tough shots. And I think we all can agree that the offense hasn't been set up in a way to help him get through some of these tough windows, right? And so now that we're playing through Alperen Sengun, I just want you to go look at his numbers through this last couple stretch, where now I think Jalen is starting to settle in and where his spots are, and he's starting to get some easy buckets in the offense. And I expect him to become a little bit more consistent. He still he's going to be inconsistent. That's what a young player is. They are inconsistent. If they weren't, they'd already be superstars, right? And so I just want everybody to understand that they have to take a break, right? And not be so absolute when these guys struggle, because they are going to struggle. That's a part of being a young guy. And then when they have these 40-point games, you see the vision. You see what consistency may look like in the future. So that's all I want to say, man. I think we just need to take a step back.
You know, we should have let you get up on the soapbox first before you went on that rant. But no, it was a good rant. Look, I had my soapbox moment.
Soapbox.
You had your soapbox moment. It was fantastic. We're gonna change the name of the show to Locked On Soapbox Moments. No, with that, Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where they can track you down at.
Yeah, man. Find me on Madman Leaks. Y'all know I stay tweeting. You'll see me on the Spaces, Rockets Watch. So, tune in, interact with me. Love to talk Rockets.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also available on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts about Jalen Green's 42-point night. Let me know how you feel about his bounce back from the bad game to this arguably the best game of his career. Let me know in the comments. I read each and every one of those every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.